England by the Pound, one of the ideas of Peter Gabriel was to convey the album, was the idea of looking at the Englishness in a different way. That was the kind of reference to the title and itself, the slogan adopted by the Labour Party. And, the British press would not accuse the band of selling out to America. Feel free to elaborate what it means to you. You're an Englishman, I'm not, so.
No. I mean, actually, by the time they get to make Selling England by the Pound, which I think was the peak of their career, of that,
absolutely, yeah,
the Gabriel band, as if we may call it that. That's my opinion. But if anybody ever says, "Oh, I don't know about Genesis, what should I start with?" I say, Selling England. Just if you like that, you'll discover the rest of it. But in fact, come the spring of '73. I decided that I was going to move on because my mission was for them to make it. And by then, of course, they got a lot bigger, but I knew they were on the way. I knew that, that they had the support of the record company and things were all moving in the right direction. And as Mike Rutherford said when I interviewed him for my book of Genesis, available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle and audiobook, read by me, Amazon.com. He said, I said, why do you think I left? I asked them all that question. And he said, well, it's just like you said a little while ago, it was tour, it was write and rehearse and record and then tour. And clearly, the band were going to succeed and be successful. The touring would get a bit bigger, more exciting, more countries, blah, blah, blah. But that's what there was in the future. And I sort of felt that I'd built that bridge when at any time it could have fallen apart and done my best to keep it up. And at that point, there were a lot of other people involved, really good people who believed as much as I did. And I started thinking about other horizons and pastures new. So in the beginning, springtime of '73, I left. And just after that, their first live album came out. And that was when they dedicated the album to me and when a lot of people misinterpreted the words and thought that I had died. So that's where we got to.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you didn't die. And then John Burns became involved. He helped me with all the productions, right? So, and the Foxtrot and so forth. So, are you in touch with him at all or no?
No. I saw David Henschel a while ago, but he's still around. But no, I don't know what happened to John Burns. He was a very nice guy. And I thought he was an incredibly good producer. He really made them sound good.
Yeah. And then Tony Banks ended up upgrading his equipment to a new model, the Mellotron, right? Of course.
Yeah.
Right. I read somewhere that Peter Gabriel said that he wrote all the lyrics contribution to the album in a couple of days. How?
That's hard to imagine, because the thing with Peter he's always got about 30 or 40 songs and no lyrics. And he writes brilliant lyrics, but it doesn't come easily. It's the rhythm and the harmonies and the melody of a song always come for him before the lyrics. But so, there's the very famous occasion later when Peter is a solo artist where the producer actually got the roadies to nail him into the studio, which was a whole broken down barn that Peter had built a studio in Bath. And until he came up with some lyrics, he literally, because he was just stopping the whole project moving forward. And it seemed to have worked. So that was Daniel Lanois, who was producing the album at the time. So maybe he did that. If he said so, who am I to disagree? But when they got to recording The Lamb, the band were in the studio writing and recording music. Again, that was another broken down barn on a Welsh farm with a mobile studio where John Burns, and Peter was in his bedroom in the farmhouse trying to write the lyrics. And, the whole thing got out of hand because it turned into a double album. So also A Kiss of Death, because the whole project was incredibly late. Peter came up with this crazy story about the, rail and all that. And they ended up having to go on tour in America because it was all booked without the album being out. And then playing the whole of The Lamb to an audience of people who loved them, but they'd never heard the record. So it was the first time they heard it. And that's not a good situation. And then halfway through the tour, Peter told them he was leaving.
We'll get to that. And so also Red Davies was involved as assistant engineer as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
And, I was listening to the album last night again, and it's amazing the first. Well, no, in this particular order, but I know what I like. First or fifth, Dancing with the Moonlit, and
Cinema Show. Don't forget the Cinema Show.
Of course, Cinema. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah, the Cinema Show, of course. Man, 10 minutes, and then the Battle of the Epping Forest, 11 minutes. Yeah, of course, it's full me. I didn't mention that one. It's amazing. Man, that was, again, to the next step.
Wasn't it?
Man. That's what I mentioned to you before, that you were there, man. You were there. If it wasn't for you. And and I think Tony Banks wrote somewhere that the first or fifth he did on his own and was presented to the group for Foxtrot, but it was rejected. And then he reworked some of the section of the song, and they put it back together. The people say, "Okay, let's go with it." And amazing.
Thank goodness.
Oh, sounds good.
Such a great song. I mean, the keyboard solo, and then Steve, just incredible. And of course, Steve's still doing that stuff now on the road, right. And it sounds fantastic because he's got a great band, and they really do a great job. And it's really great for the fans that someone's doing all that stuff. So it's kind of worked out really well in the end.
Yeah, man, Steve Hackett is getting better and better with age. I mean, I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about Jeff Beck and so forth, and he's amazing. He have done so many beautiful albums.
I think it's his birthday tomorrow.
It's the 12th, 13th. Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, they're I think at 23 hours apart from Peter Gabriel.
Yes.
Yeah. So one is
same year. Yeah, Peter's the next day.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's Valentine's Day.
You need to call the two of them.
I do, and I will.
So, we're talking about this.
Albert Hall.
Genesis Revision of the Royal Albert Hall, and this one, another one. And then.
That's from the Palladium.
Yeah, and Selling England by the Pound.
Yeah.
And
he's doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah, there's a revision.
I know.
Anyway,
and so good. Yeah. I went to see them the last tour late last year in a town called Northampton. Yeah. I never really like going to London gigs because everybody's there. It's I like to go out of town. So Northampton.
But you live there.
I know, but if you go out of town,
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I get to the gig. Northampton's 2 hours from where I live, and my sister lives 20 minutes down the road, so I go and stay the night with her. But which is always lovely. But I get to the gig, they've done the sound check, and I just go straight into the dressing room where Steve and Joe are, and it's just the three of us, and we just hang out. And if it's a London gig, it would just be everybody wants a slice. And so, I've always preferred to, that's why I told you with where Peter plays, we're going to go to either Switzerland or Italy to see him, because it'll be less crazy than the London shows. But I'm dying to see it. And, he's got all the old band, Pete, Tony, Manu, and David Rhodes.
And David Rhodes, yeah. He liked to stick with his names. I mean, that worked for him, right? So he knows his music and he knows what he like and so on. So eventually you end up leaving them. Like you mentioned, you felt they have reached a stage where they could carry on without you.
I knew that they would.
Yeah. But I want to ask you a difficult question. Looking back, you go back in your life and say maybe that was the right decision, maybe it was the wrong decision, or your life would have been very different, or you don't have second thought about, or you at the time was the right decision for you, right? Because you want to do other things, but
yeah. No, I think it was the right decision. I have no regrets.
Really?
The only regret I ever had was I told you yesterday was that I didn't have a camera. Nobody took any pictures at the cottage. It was crazy, So that's a very small regret. No. I felt like it had done its thing, my involvement, and I've just been so proud of how well they've done since, and both together and apart. There's no other band like them. You can say the same about maybe King Crimson and stuff. It's a very different story. And if anybody gets a chance to see their movie, came out at the end of last year, it's fantastic. You don't have to be a Crimson fan. It's a wonderful documentary. I absolutely loved it. So, but anyway, I was thrilled and very honoured to be at the last gig, the third gig at the O2, which you were at, and I was very lucky to hang out with them afterwards, and just remember all those times together. What an amazing full circle that it's been. So I don't regret, because the thing is that when after Peter left and they made Trick of the Tail, they asked me to go back on the road with them. That was in 1976. Because not unreasonably, they were quite nervous about how it was going to go down without Peter. Because coming on the back of the Lamb with Peter doing all the costumes and all the stuff, so I think they wanted me for a security blanket a bit. So the summer of 76, we went on tour with the Trick of the Tail. And then that was the last time I worked with them. And then, of course, after that, Peter started his solo career. And again, so I worked with him for a couple of years at the beginning of first two albums of his solo career, Car and Scratches.
Scratches, right, yeah. And then we're talking about this from Richard, feel free to buy it. Don't take my word for it. It's an easy read, funny read, good, very good story. You can find Amazon or many outlets online. I want to read something that our friend Steve Hackett mentioned of the world of the side you live in. So you were the chief cook, sound mixer, bottle washer. There was nothing you couldn't do. Consigliere, therapist, midwife. You talked to me down many times. I was thinking I'm going to leave this band now, but you would say, no, you are the right man for the job. So I keep on thinking, am I up to this? And I didn't know until the second album they actually liked me playing. So
that was very kind of him, and it was absolutely true. I couldn't, after Amped, I couldn't imagine a better guitarist than Steve, better musician and guitarist than Steve. And so, but musicians are often full of self-doubt, and they need. I understand now. They need encouragement. They need boosting, and so I was very lucky to be there to do that for him, and I'm very grateful to him for saying that.
Sure. No, you deserve it. And another quote from our friend Armando Gallo here when he joined Genesis. Steve Hackett I was wrong. Steve was the one that ended up putting the ad on the melody making, saying, guitarist, writer, sick, receptive musician determined to strive beyond the stagnant music for, and here's the phone numbers, so forth. And Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel ended up calling him, right? And he's saying, it's Peter Gabriel here. Remember Steve Hackett, blah, 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 and so forth. So, and I think, of course, they didn't know one another. And Steve Hackett mentioned to Peter Gabriel, well, where I can see you guys to see if I like your music. Peter would have said, yeah, if you want to see it, we are doing a free Christmas show at the Lyceum at the time. And the rest, obviously, is history. Unbelievable. I mean, for every single thing, we can talk an hour in every album, Richard, and I think I'm going to be calling you every day for the next 2 months. so many stories, man. So many.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. And of course, if people want more, as you rightly say, it's all in my book.
All the book, right? So
and you've got all the formats there. So whatever you like. Yeah.
Perfect. And then Tony Smith became their tour manager, right? And then Tony's father also, I think, it was involved.
Well, Tony and his father were promoters. So they were the ones who put on the gigs. And he put a Genesis tour on with his dad, John Smith. And I know people get confused between Tony Stratton Smith and Tony Smith, but they're two very different people.
Different people, yeah.
And they were playing in Manchester, and they went back to the hotel afterwards. I mean, I wasn't there, but Mike and Tony were obviously burning the midnight oil in the hotel, and they got talking, and I think Tony probably said, offered his services for management, and Mike thought it sounded like a good idea, and one thing led to another, and again the rest is history. And Tony did an incredible job with the band. He really did. He really knew how to handle them. And he once said to me that when a new tour was coming up, and he'd get the whole thing set up, all the travel arrangements and the technical stuff and where they were playing and blah blah blah. And he said he would sit down with Mike and Tony and Phil and Steve, and he said it was like he would present the thing to them, and we have this quiz show, very famous, very long-running quiz show in England called University Challenge, where they're very difficult questions because these are very intelligent, well-educated university students, and he said it was like doing that. They were firing at all sides. When is he going to do this? He said he had to be really on the tip of his toes to keep things going, because they weren't a band that would just sort of say, okay, fine, we're doing that, let's go. They questioned everything. So Tony Smith was the man who could field all of those questions, and he's done a wonderful job.
Yeah. Who is the one that ended up, I always get confused. Is Tony Smith who ended up dying, or Tony Strat? The Strat?
Which is who?
Which one of the Tony Smith ended up passing away? There's one that passed away.
Oh, Tony Stratton Smith.
That's the one that passed away, yeah.
Yeah, he died a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think he wasn't a very happy man, I don't think. And ultimately, even though he was such a visionary and he gave so much, I think probably he's succumbed to the alcohol a bit. So he died ages ago, and that was a big blow. Now Tony Smith's very much still with us. Of course, I saw him at the O2 that night briefly. He was pretty busy, but he's still around. He still looks after everyone's interests, but also Nick Mason, who is busy on the road. He's got a thing called The Saucer Full of Secrets, which is like a sort of Pink Floyd thing with him and other musicians, and all of that is managed under Tony Smith's management umbrella
as well. Yeah. Man, I wish I had met you some months ago. I could have gone backstage with you.
Well, let's hope we can meet up when you come over.
Yeah, definitely. And then we need to talk about a very important album, the Lamb, right? Everybody called the Lamb. The Lamb lies down on Broadway. Peter was supposed to be writing the lyrics because it was his concept, and well, another surprise for you. We're talking about that.
Oh, there we go. Well done.
I like surprises.
Excellent.
Okay, what a concept! What an album that was. I mean, obviously, selling England by the pound. Probably somebody in 100 years from now, if we are still alive as human beings, look at the history of music. Selling England by the pound will be one of these albums that one of the top 50, top 100 album in the history of music. It's amazing. But this is right there. I mean, in my humble opinion. I'm not a musician. I don't know how to read music. I have a lot of music. I've been listening to music many, many, many years. So, in my opinion, that's a very good album. But
I love The Lamb as well.
Yeah,
but I think it's flawed, and I think the band were, in a bit of crisis.
That's right.
Steve and Peter both had babies.
Yeah,
and Peter's daughter Anna had a very hard start in life. Mm-hmm. Frankly, we didn't know whether she was going to make it or not. And fortunately, she came through. But Peter and Jill were dealing with, that enormous bomb in the middle of their lives, which is having a baby. And they were all down in Wales. I'd been in America for months, just traveling around. But I got home and I phoned Mike, and it was clear that things weren't in good shape. So I got in my van and drove down to the farm in Wales where they all were. And, it was a tough time. They've all talked about it. Tony Banks, he hated it, the production of that album. Having said that, the band produced some unbelievable music, incredible stuff. They'd been recording all day. The day I went down there, they were about halfway through the process. Peter would go to his bedroom and Anna would be screaming the place down. He'd be trying to write lyrics. The band would go down to the barn and just, jam. As Steve said, Genesis were playing free jazz. They were improvising, and a lot of that stuff made it onto the album. And, that's the only time they've ever done that. It was very special, incredible. And I'm very glad I witnessed that. But anyway, come what may, the album was produced. It was late. It was a double album, blah, blah. And then the show, with the unbelievable. I mean, Tony Banks is always very truthful about these things. He said he reckons on the whole tour, America and Europe, that the thing worked perfectly about 4 or 5 times. Otherwise, there was always something going wrong. They had these 3 projectors back projecting backstage, and they would jam or something would get stuck, and and think it was just there was all the stuff with the costumes and the Slipper Man and all this, and they made it through. He may have been a bit exaggerating in how many times it worked. I saw the show, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I went with them to France and Portugal and traveled with them for a few days. And it seemed to work all right whenever I saw it. Because I knew the thing really well. I actually had a tape, I wish I could find it, which was the whole of The Lamb without vocals. And I knew the thing well enough that I would just drive around and put the tape on and just sing along with the whole thing, And I mean, there's things like the Lamia and, endless, just fantastic stuff, really brilliant music on that. But there you go. It was an unhappy time for many of them. So I think, in a way, the spirit of that made its way onto the album, even though it absolutely stands up as a classic.
Yeah. By the way, before we go to the Hidley ranch, what happened with the Christmas cottage? Your parents end up, selling that cottage,
well,
many years ago. But do you go there?
Yeah.
Every summer you drive around?
The guy who wrote my book, who did it with me, he's on the front cover, Chris Charlesworth.
Yeah.
He lives about 2 miles from the cottage.
Yeah.
So, I used to go down to his house once a week, and I would speak what would turn out to be the next chapter. And he recorded it, and then he would transcribe it and edit it, and then send it to me. And that's how we produced the book.
Got it.
And one day we were talking about the cottage, and I said, it's only just down the road. So we went over there, and I knocked on the door, and there's a guy there living there called Nigel, and he knows the history. And so he was very friendly, and there've been some changes since we were there, bit of extra building and whatever. And he showed us around, and it's still there. And it's still a wonderful place, a very beautiful place. Yeah, that's the story with the cottage.
Yeah, I will. When I'm going there in March, I will rent, get a car, hire a car, like you guys call it. And
well, I can tell you how to find it.
There, huh?
I can tell you how to find it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go down together.
I will go with you, so the guy will allow me to take some pictures, stuff like that. Otherwise, he will call the police on me. He say, "Who are you?" I think
he's used to, because other people find it and go and look at it. And you can't really see it from the road, but it's only an hour from London.
Yeah,
and there's quite a nice pub nearby where we could have lunch.
Okay, so you bet. All right, you bet.
We could do that.
Yeah, and
don't tell anyone else.
No. I want people that listen to 1,000 people. So while the band working on new material, the Hidley Ranch, for 3 months, right?
Yeah.
What memory do you have for that particular place itself, the ranch? Very different from the farm, very different for the cottage. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. The Hidley Ranch.
Oh, yeah. That was after my time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Headley Grange. Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah.
That was really a notorious place. It really broken down, but it happened to be very convenient for where everyone was living at the time. It's also famous for where Led Zeppelin recorded Kashmir, which is my favorite song of theirs.
Oh, yeah.
Because the drum sound is so special, and it was just to do with the acoustics in the room. So, I mean, I went there once when they were there, but I can't tell you much more about it, to be honest.
Yeah,
I was getting busy with other things.
Yeah, so a lot of famous records have been recorded there. Of course, the house was sold out many times to different people. Had not, they wanted that. Had nothing to do with the stuff, but it will be great again to drive around and take some pictures. I will knock at the door and say, "Can you give me 5 minutes of your time? It's important to me." And maybe bring them a bottle of wine or something to thank them to that. Because I like the history. I like to think how things happen. And that particular album was story devised by Peter Gabriel about Rael, a Puerto Rican from New York City, who is suddenly taken on a journey of self-discovery, and very, very, and then obviously Peter Gabriel in each one of the track is marked with increased tension about Peter Gabriel and who his sister invited all the lyrics and so forth.
He's delving deep into his unconscious, and judging by what most of the songs are like, it's a pretty scary place. There's all the stuff about early sexual awakening and sexual inadequacies, counting out time. That's what that's all about. And so I do remember one funny thing. After the album was released, I was visiting Peter down in Bath, and his mother rang up and said that she'd had a chance to listen to the album a couple of times, and she wanted to ask him what it was about. And it has to be said that a lot of it was about her and the influence she'd had on his early life. So it was a 45-minute conversation where all I could hear was Peter's end of it. And you could hear he was quite uncomfortable, trying to explain all this.